listening to Reality Wrap. I'm your host, Melanie. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show.
I'm back, baby!
Hey guys, I'm back. I didn't mean to take a break for so long, but I started watching The Real Housewives of Orange County and I totally lost interest in it. I kind of came in with hopes that this season was going to be good because I did not enjoy last season at all, and I definitely am not enjoying this season at all, so I stopped watching it. I'm actually I don't even know how many episodes behind. I just kind of gave up on it. So I think I actually recapped one episode and that was kind of it. So I ended up taking a break. I didn't plan to, but that's what happened. I hope you guys have all been great over the last 2 months. I've been doing a little traveling, obviously working. I've also been working on the new house that we bought out in Colorado. For those of you who have listened to me for a while, we moved from the DC area out to Colorado. So we've been kind of just trying to get caught up from that whole transition of buying a house out here and selling the house out there and then setting up the house the way we want it and painting stuff and having contractors over and all that fun stuff. So that's kind of where I have been. I am back today to start recapping The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. I had every intention of recapping last week's episode 1, but we had company in town that were here over 3 days, and so I just didn't have the opportunity to do it. So I was like, you know what, I'll just start on episode 2. So here I am. It is going to just be me recapping Salt Lake City. Sean recapped it with me last season, and true to what he said he will not watch the season if Monica is not on, and he is not watching the season. So I don't know if maybe down the road he'll change his mind or not, but as of right now, Sean is not watching Salt Lake City, although he has been asking me what has been going on Salt Lake City. So maybe he'll start watching it in the future, but there are no guarantees. I'm not going to lie. I also came into this season pretty irritated that Monica is not on it. I thought even though she was messy and chaotic, she was so good last season. She made the whole season. I cannot, to this day, still believe that they cut her out. Who knows? Maybe we'll see her back down the road. I don't know. I know a lot of people really didn't like her. I know a lot of people really loved her. I found her super interesting to watch, and I also thought the dynamic with her and her mother was pretty interesting. It was very real. That was pretty apparent. Unlike what I feel like is going on this season, I feel like the cast knows that last season Monica was the one who brought it and everybody was upset when she was removed from the show. So I feel like they're producing this season a little bit for sure, but we're only 2 episodes in, so hopefully that will kind of change. So far, after watching the first 2 episodes, this is kind of where I'm standing with everybody. With Lisa, I definitely feel like she is overproducing. Not for a second do I think that her throwing that glass at the dinner on episode 1 was real. I feel like she did that. I mean, she might have been mad, but I feel like throwing the glass isn't something she normally would have done. Like when we see Teresa do stuff like that, I feel like that's pretty genuine. Her temper is like that. I don't feel like Lisa is that type of person, but I feel like I sound like Whitney, right? These are my feelings. I feel like she did that just to kind of add some drama to the scene. Maybe she was that angry. I don't know, but that was the feeling I kind of got from that scene. Heather looks really good with her new Ozempic body, but I still can't stand her. She's such a pick-me girl. She drives me nuts. Whitney, still totally annoying. I'm so over her healing journey and her feelings. I know that sounds really shitty of me to say, but literally it has been, I don't know how many seasons of this healing journey and her being deep in her feelings, and she's using it almost as a weapon towards people. She's expecting everybody to bend over backwards for her. Look, I understand that she has trauma, but at some point it's your trauma and you kind of have to stop pushing it onto everybody else. I hope that didn't come off too insensitive. I am very sympathetic to whatever it was that she went through, but at the same time, she's been talking about it for years now, and I'm kind of like, okay, you got to move forward. And let's talk about something else that's going on in your life, and not something that's made up, like your marital problems that we had. Was that last season or the season before? That was totally fake. I am enjoying Angie this season. I do feel like the scroll thing was a little overproduced, and I think she was expecting it to have more of an impact than it really did. We've seen props done, I don't know how many times, but used in a way that it seemed more genuine. I feel like she totally pre-planned that. Obviously, she had the scroll pre-printed and she put it in her purse to reveal at this party. It didn't come off very well for me. But I am enjoying watching her this season so far. I do not understand why Meredith is even on this show still, or that she's still a main cast member. Maybe make her a friend of, because clearly this season her story is going to be making bath bombs and having a bat mitzvah, which kind of seemed to come out of left field. This whole thing with her being angry at Whitney for creating bath bombs, even though Whitney's had the bath bombs for years on her website, because Meredith apparently owns all bath products. I don't know, because she enjoys baths. I love a good bath, but that doesn't mean I should come out with a bath product. I just don't find her interesting. I don't know if she's just naturally this boring in life, or if she's just not sharing what really goes on in her life. We all already know that she doesn't live in Salt Lake City year round. She only lives there for a couple of months. My guess is it's the only months that they're filming. And then she lives, I think, in New York, and then she travels in Europe and stuff like that, which is great. I think that's awesome. She should talk more about that kind of stuff, but she really doesn't seem to, or at least not on the show. Maybe she does on her podcast. I know her and Seth had a podcast at one point last season. I have no idea if they're still doing it. I have not gone out to check. Okay, I just paused and went to go see if she was still doing her podcast with Seth, and they have not had an episode out since February 2nd. And they had only 11 episodes. And then that was it. I guess they ended the podcast. I have no idea what happened. My guess is just looking at the ratings. Not that my ratings are great, but looking at the ratings, it didn't go over very well. They probably didn't get a lot of downloads, so they just bailed on it. Mary seems 100% clocked in this season. She is absolutely the asshole I love to watch. I know that sounds bad, but she is, I don't even think she knows how she comes off. I honestly don't. I think she just kind of says whatever comes to her mind and doesn't really care whether or not she offends you. But yeah, I think she's great this season. She seems like she's 100% clocked in. Then we have the two newbies. Bronwyn, I'm still on the fence with her. While she may wear couture, I am definitely not a fan of most of her fashions. Kind of like Sutton from Beverly Hills. She's another one who wears all these couture clothing, and honestly, I do not like the way she dresses either. That's just me. I know there are people out there who probably think the way Bronwyn dresses is amazing. Lisa definitely seems to be a fan, right? But that's no surprise, because if you even have a whiff of money, I kind of feel like Lisa, you could wear a garbage bag. She'd be like, that's great. And then we have Britani. She's interesting. She is a friend of Heather's who is also a Mormon. I don't know if she's still a Mormon, or because she's divorced, she's not part of the Mormon church anymore. I'm not really sure, but she was raised as a Mormon and was married to a guy, I think, who was Mormon. She is on again, off again, dating Jared Osmond, who is a nephew of Donnie and Marie Osmond, who are also Mormons. So they're all kind of in that Mormon vicinity. It sounds like her life is a little bit chaotic with the boyfriend and also her children. We still haven't learned that much about her yet. I do feel like in the second episode, we learned a lot more about Bronwyn, which I really enjoyed, but we still haven't learned a ton about Britani yet. And I don't know if she is full-time or she's a friend of. That really isn't clear yet. Let's go ahead and jump into the recap of episode 2. It was okay. I'm going to give it a C overall. I thought it was kind of a little boring up until they did the ropes course towards the end. Bronwyn and Lisa are driving in the car, and they're talking about what had happened the night before at Lisa's dinner. Angie calls, and it was so funny because Lisa's like, can you be quiet for a second? Can you just be quiet? I just need to answer this. It was so weird. I don't know why she couldn't tell Angie, oh yeah, I have Bronwyn in the car. I don't know why that was so weird like that, but she definitely came off weird. Angie asks if they can meet up and have a discussion over, what happened at her dinner, and Lisa agrees. Over at Mary's house, she's talking to her son about how Britani had called her poor. And it really pissed her off. I don't know why she took such great offense to that. I think obviously it struck a chord with her because it sounds like when she explains later on her upbringing with her mother that maybe it was kind of true. I mean, she did say that her mom was more worried about having a man and that her and her 5 brothers and sisters often went unfed. I think maybe that's why she had such a horrible reaction to it. And it kind of does explain also why she's so obsessed with collecting. And I do that in quotes, designer clothing. We've all seen her closet and her bedrooms and all that. She has stuff everywhere and it's all designer and expensive and vintage and she really covets it. And my guess now, after knowing a little bit more about Mary's background, that it's due to the way she grew up. She tells us in her talking head that her son is still living at home and he doesn't have a job and he doesn't go to school and she gives him money. But at this point in his life, she feels like he can stay at her house and that eventually she will kick him out. I also think if he wasn't in the house, she would be all alone because clearly her grandpa husband is not living in the house. I believe, didn't she say this last season that he was living in Las Vegas or their Nevada home? I know they have a home out there and that he spends most of his time out there. I'm guessing, because we haven't seen him and she hasn't talked about him, that he's living in another house. And so, of course, she's going to keep her son with her because otherwise she's all alone. Also, one point to make, wasn't her son married last season? And wasn't his wife living there? She had talked about it last season, how she didn't know that the wife was actually living there because they had different wings on the house. So she wasn't really keeping tabs on him. I'm guessing that they either divorced or they had the marriage annulled or whatever, because she clearly did not bring her up. We switch back over to the car and Lisa and Bronwyn go and they pick Heather up at her house. And it appears like the only place they go when they're driving around is to Wendy's. And I'm assuming that is because Lisa is the spokesperson and is constantly promoting them on her Instagram. So of course, she's got to work them into the TV show. But other than the Wendy's, it just seems like they're just driving around and talking. I can't even tell you the last time I ate at a Wendy's. I don't really eat fast food. If I'm going to eat out, it's not going to be fast food. But if I do, on the rare occasion, eat fast food, it's definitely not a Wendy's. Like I said, I don't even know the last time I ate at one. It has to have been over 10 years ago. So Lisa is venting about Whitney and how she is pissed that Angie told Whitney what she had said about Whitney going on that Vile Files podcast. And Whitney, I believe, called her a villain or something along those lines. And Bronwyn chimes in and she's like, oh yeah, when Whitney said, this is the new healed Whitney and flipped you off, I felt like she had practiced that in the mirror and it was totally a shtick. I have to agree, it did seem a little rehearsed, but not unwarranted, because I do feel like even though Whitney drives me completely bonkers, that was a little bit of a gang up. I do understand everybody's frustration, don't get me wrong, but I think they should have addressed it with her more on an individual level versus kind of all coming at her. But on the flip side, it did give Whitney a moment that she clearly was looking for. If you guys remember last season when she was screaming at Heather when I don't know where they were on vacation, wherever they were on vacation, and she was screaming at Heather coming out of the bar and Heather was not engaging with her. Now, you exploited my vagina. So at least this little gang up on Whitney did give her a moment that she has been looking for. So there is that. We are now with Seth and Meredith and they're going to a cooking class. I find their scene so boring. Seth has a new job in Ohio that requires him to travel all the time. Also, clearly Meredith has had a facelift and possibly a chin implant, because in this scene, her side profile did not even look like her. From the front, it still looks like her, but when she turns to the side, she looks like a different person. I hope she stops where she's at and doesn't keep going, because she is starting to look a little odd. So while they're eating, and it just so happens to be the same meal that, and I can't remember what it's called, but it's the same meal that they made on the rebooted Real Housewives of New York, which I thought that was funny that we've seen this dish. I wish I could remember what it was. It had like eggs and tomatoes on it. Anyways, it was the same meal that they had now in 2 different franchises of Housewives. So while they're eating, Meredith tells Seth that she wants to have a bat mitzvah. Even though this is traditionally done, I guess, at the age of 13, I'm going to be honest, I'm about as interested in watching this as I was with watching Tammy Sue get baptized however many seasons ago. Do y'all remember that? Her whole season was about her being a born-again Christian. I just don't care. So I really hope Meredith gives us more than this and her bath bombs, because otherwise, really, why is she on this show? Lisa and Angie meet up to have their talk. Angie tells Lisa that she feels like everybody ganged up on Whitney, and Lisa disagrees. And she is pissed because Angie went and told Whitney the conversation that she and Angie had privately about the way she was feeling about Whitney going on the Vials File podcast and saying that she was the show's villain. Not to mention, she also alluded to Lisa being the most insecure cast member in Salt Lake City, and that she kind of tied it back to how she has to get glam every day. And I bet you $10 that statement of her saying that Lisa is an insecure person, or alluding to Lisa being the most insecure person on the cast, bothered Lisa more than her calling her a villain, because Lisa definitely would not want people to believe that she is insecure. I do see how people could think that she is insecure, because she does do a lot of posturing when it comes to like all the designer stuff she wears and her $60,000 ring. She talks about all the money she has. Remember when Monica was really upset about that? She's like, you're always talking about how rich you are, or whatever. Some people could view it as she does it because she wants people to think she has more money than she really does. I still question how rich Lisa Barlow is. I don't fully 100% believe that she's as rich as she tries to come off. And I also kind of wonder if she really does have glam done every day. My guess is she does not. She just said that because it makes her come off like she has this extra money to spend, that she has a glam person come to her house every single day to do her makeup. Again, I question that. So I could see where people feel like she tries to come off as something that she's not, which makes her look insecure. Anyway, back to the point of this scene. I do understand why Lisa would be upset with Angie, because she thought she was having that conversation with Angie and she was just venting. Angie turned around and took it to Whitney when it really should have just stayed between her and Lisa. Angie tells us in her talking head that she told Whitney because she thought by telling her the way that Lisa felt would make Whitney apologize to Lisa about going on to the Vial Files and saying those things about her, but I don't know. I question that a little bit. We finally get a home scene with Bronwyn. We meet her husband, and I believe his name is Todd, and he is way older than her. We knew that. I think he's like 30 years her senior. He is in the tech field, and obviously he is rich. I went and looked up online because she had said that they'd known each other for 10 years. And I was like, wow, that's not really a long time. So I went online to see when they were married, and they were actually married in 2016. So they really haven't been together for very long. They have only lived in this house for a year and a half. Makes me kind of wonder, did she live in Salt Lake City before they moved into this house a year and a half ago? Or did she move to Salt Lake City to try and get on the show? I don't know. I kind of wonder. Her house is really cool, but the way it's decorated, like the furniture and the art and all the colors, it's just a little too much for me. I know there are a ton of people out there that like that. I don't really care how much she paid for it all. I'm just not a fan. It was a little too bright for me. We now get a scene with Heather and Whitney. They meet up at a crystal shop, of course, so Whitney can heal some more. Whitney tells Heather that she feels like everybody had ganged up on her at Lisa's dinner. And Heather's like, it wasn't a gang up, but more of all of us just agreeing that you have made up shit about everybody in this group and you don't really take accountability for it. Whitney tries to cop out of this by saying that everything she said were not facts, that it was just feelings. Everybody was accusing her of lying about her feelings, not actual facts. And I was like, what a cop-out. Whitney tells Heather that she wishes that Heather would have stood up for her more instead of just piling on. And Heather actually apologizes to her for not sticking up for her. But if everybody is pointing things out, you have multiple people kind of saying the same thing, then maybe Whitney should take note. Not gonna disagree here. Whitney is a total pot stirrer. Whitney tells Heather that she is planning this trip to Milwaukee to go to this drag bar owned by Trixie, who also owned the Trixie Motel that we saw on last season, but she isn't sure about inviting everybody because a lot of them aren't in a good place. Obviously, a lot of people are pissed off at Whitney. Heather's like, well, I'm going to have this team building event before we go to Milwaukee to try and bring everybody back together, and hopefully that will work. Over at Meredith's house, we are supposed to believe that she is actually in her kitchen making bath bombs and stirring it up because she tells us that she is not going to just slap her name on something and call it hers. Obviously, this is a dig at Whitney, whose jewelry line is straight from AliExpress and Alibaba. Dana Wilkie did a whole video about it, and she actually took photos from Whitney's, is it Prism? Something. I think that's what her jewelry line is called. The exact same photos from Whitney's jewelry line's website, and she compared them with the AliExpress and Alibaba photos, and they are identical. She didn't even change the photos when she purchased these pieces of jewelry for like $2 and $3 a piece, and then turned around and put them on her website and is selling them for like $60 a piece. You would think she would take the time to change the photos, but she didn't. So anyways, go out there and look at that video on Dana Wilkie's YouTube. She does a really good breakdown of it. So I felt like that was a dig when she said, I'm not just going to slap my name on something and call it mine. But I also don't believe Meredith. Not in a million years do I think that she's in her kitchen and going to the lab making bath bombs. She's going to do the same thing that Whitney does. Or maybe just a nicer version of a bath bomb. Maybe not Alibaba or AliExpress, but maybe something more high-end. But she's not going to make it. Heather and Britani meet up to play pickleball because we haven't seen pickleball played on enough housewife franchises. It seems to be the sport of choice over the last 5 years. So they're talking about dating, and Heather's basically saying like she's in a good place right now and she's not interested in dating anybody. We find out that I guess in the Mormon religion that you can't get into heaven without a man. You can not have children and get into heaven, but if you don't have a man, I guess you can't get into heaven. Seems kind of weird. Or whatever. Britani tells Heather that she basically sacrificed her relationship with her children to focus on her relationship with a man. We don't get the whole story other than she is estranged from her kids. I hope she tells it because otherwise there's no point in her telling us that she doesn't talk to her kids if she's not going to go into why she doesn't talk to her kids. Kind of like how, what's her name on Jersey? Danielle, when she talks about how she doesn't talk to her brother, but we don't get any backstory as to why she doesn't talk to her brother. Just makes me not care. We then get Bronwyn. She goes to one of Angie's salons. We find out that Angie and Sean are about to open their 10th salon. I think that is awesome. Angie tells Bronwyn that she was worried about what Bronwyn thought of her after Lisa's dinner and how she had left with Whitney. And Bronwyn's like, I really love Lisa, but nothing that was said about Lisa wasn't untrue. I wonder how Lisa felt watching that. My guess is she'll let Bronwyn get away with a little bit of talk like that because she is so well off and she wears couture and all of that stuff. And we do know that Lisa kind of holds that in a higher regard if you kind of come from that. Bronwyn brings up how Britani had made fun of her heart jacket or whatever, and essentially calls her stupid, saying, she doesn't know how to spell. She couldn't even put the letters YSL together. And she's like, yeah, when I was with her, we had gone bowling. was like, they went bowling? That's such a weird thing to do. It must have been so boring they didn't put it in the show. My guess is they filmed it for a scene and nothing happened, so they didn't put it in. Anyway, she told her that Brandy kept bringing up her heart coat, or she had brought it up a couple of times. Bronwyn tells us in her talking head that it's women like Britani that make her kind of closed off to having relationships with women, that she trusts them, and then, she turns around and they're stabbing her in the back or something along those lines. Although they were never really friends, and right out of the gate, Britani pissed off Bronwyn. So I don't know how that kind of correlates, but that's how she compares it. It is now the day of Heather's rope course. Meredith claims to have tennis elbow from churning butter, so she can't do it. I was like, wait a minute. That was last season. Clearly it was months ago. I think Meredith just decided she wasn't going to do it. Maybe she's scared of heights. Who knows? Maybe she's not athletic. Maybe she just didn't want to do it. But I will say, Mary full on came and did the ropes course. I was so surprised because normally she's the one who's sitting out. She just says she doesn't want to do it. She doesn't come up with some fake excuse, but she was totally in. I was shocked. So they do the ropes course, and I think it was Lisa and somebody else had to be taken down. They called a code. Was it a code 1 or a code red? I can't remember what it was, but somebody had to go up and bring them down. They were done. We get another asshole comment from Mary. Is her name Mealy? I don't know how to say her name. Mealy was coming down, and as she was being lowered down, Mary goes, "Who is that?" And somebody says, "It's Mealy." And she goes, "Wow, I thought she was thinner than that." Again, I think she just says this rude stuff and she doesn't even realize how she sounds or how it comes off. Maybe she doesn't care. I don't know, but it was rude, and she's the asshole I love to watch. After they're finished with the ropes course, they go sit down to have some food and some wine. Britani decides to make this really odd toast.
Hey, you guys, I want to make a toast. Ting, 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 ting. All right, talkers. For those of you who know, my relationship drama has been on again, off again. And so last night, Jared took me out, and then we bought matching jewelry at Louis Vuitton. Oh. And then he officially asked me to be his girlfriend. Oh my God! And he made it Instagram official, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but it is a huge deal because he's never posted about anyone ever.
But the Instagram I saw, he said, my best friend, and you guys were at Costco. I'm not giving up anything to go to Costco with some guy to clean my ass.
Nobody's going to take any shine away from Costco, certainly not me. And while a Costco cart has meaning to a lot of people, and certainly in my life, I don't think it's the declaration of love that most young girls are looking for.
My best friend at Costco was the big gesture.
Oh, wait, is this the post? You're not official. Brittany, you're not official.
I want you to be happy for me.
I'm just trying to figure out, why do we care?
Mary, rude.
I am 100% with Mary here. I don't know why we care, why she needed to make a toast or an announcement that her and her boyfriend are officially boyfriend and girlfriend. When she said that they went to Louis Vuitton and they purchased matching jewelry, I thought she was going to say he asked her to marry him. But no, that wasn't the case at all. She just made an announcement that they're official, like she's a girl in high school and not a 50-year-old woman. It was super odd. My guess is she was just trying to have a moment for the show. I don't know. Again, I'm with Mary. I was like, this was dumb. So after Mary's like, oh, we don't care, Brittany's like, that's rude. And Mary says, you mean like you were to me the other night when you called me poor? Boy, that really got under her skin. Lisa tells Britani, I really feel like this Jared guy is working you over. And Whitney chimes in. She's like, yeah, I really feel the same way. Heather tells them, well, you guys, Britani has a lot going on in her life. She's trying to repair her relationship with her family. Britani tells them that neither of her daughters will talk to her. Again, she doesn't say why. She says it's a personal story that she's not going to talk about. So why even bring it up? I don't know, but she does. Mary brings up a good point, and it's like, you can tell us about your boyfriend, but you can't tell us about your kids. But then Mary takes it a little too far and says, if you were a kind person, you would mend the relationship with her children. Again, we don't know what went on with her children. I don't want to judge her. I don't know why she brought it up in the first place. Maybe she was trying to get ahead of it. Like she knew it was going to come out that she was estranged from her family. She was worried maybe one of the girls were going to come out and say something, or somebody that knows her was going to come out and say something on social media. So she was trying to get ahead of it. I don't know. But she shouldn't have brought it up if she didn't want to talk about why her children don't talk to her. All we know is that she told Heather that she put more into her relationship with a man than she did with her kids. Mary tells us in her talking head that she is triggered by Britani not talking to her kids because her mom did the same thing. Ding, ding, ding. This is where I kind of like that we are learning a little bit more about Mary. She tells us that her mom had 5 children at home and that her mother was more worried about having a man than she was taking care of her kids, that they would go unfed, which is probably why she's overly sensitive to being called poor, which takes me back to what I said at the beginning of my podcast, where I feel like maybe that is why she puts so much stock in having designer clothing and nice houses, is because when she was growing up, clearly they didn't have a lot. I mean, she talked about not being fed. That's kind of a big deal. So having money now is a really big deal, and that's something like she probably wanted her whole life, which is why maybe she married her step-grandfather, because the grandmother had all this money, or together they had all this money. So when her grandma died, she kind of stepped into that role and she was able to take over her grandma's designer clothing and all the houses and all the money. I don't know. It's twisted. Either way. But her sharing that about her childhood does kind of give us a little look into who Mary Cosby is. Britani tells Mary to shut up, and Mary's like, why don't you shut me up? And Lisa interjects and she tells Mary, it's going a little too far. You guys really need to back off. Bronwyn surprisingly chimes in and says, I would like to learn something about Britani that isn't unhinged. And she's like, what do you mean? She's like, your life is chaotic. You called me a hoarder. You told Mary that she was poor. Britani, you really need to get your words in order. Heather gets pissed and tells Bronwyn, you really need to get your words in order because you are telling everybody a different story. When you were with Whitney, you were being supportive of Whitney, but then when you were on the drive with me and Lisa, you were Team Lisa. Bronwyn's like, yeah, I did laugh at Whitney when she talked about being a healed Whitney, but I also told Whitney that I said that. And Whitney tells us in her talking head that Bronwyn admitted to her what she said. Whitney, once again, takes this opportunity to bring up her trauma, and that if someone is telling you about their trauma, don't weaponize it to hurt them. And you guys all steamrolled me while we were at Lisa's dinner. And Lisa's like, you steamrolled me by going on a podcast and talking about me. Whitney tells Lisa that she didn't go on the podcast to bash her. And Lisa's like, yeah, well, you take things out on me that I have nothing to do with. And Meredith tells her, I feel the same way. Whitney does apologize to Lisa, but she does not apologize to Meredith, who in her talking head tells us that she feels like she deserved an apology. I am not really sure for what. I don't know if it's for the bath bombs. I don't know. But Lisa tells us in her talking head that she accepts Whitney's apology, but it doesn't mean that they don't have other issues. So obviously this is not finished. Whitney then takes the opportunity to invite them all to Milwaukee to go to Trixie's drag bar. Meredith tells her she's not really sure that she can make it and they will discuss it later. Whitney tells us in her talking head she really doesn't care if Meredith comes. So that's kind of where they stand. I don't think Meredith will ever be getting an apology from Whitney. Next week, they head to Milwaukee for Trixie's drag bar. It looks like Lisa talks about Jack having medical issues. I don't know if we'll get to hear the full extent of that, but we see her crying in the clip. And then we also see Meredith talking about how Whitney buys cheap jewelry and then turns around and sells it for way more than what she purchased it for. And that is all I have for this week's recap. So I will talk to you guys next week. Have a great weekend. Bye.